You know, it's interesting. Last week, exiting last week, I left with a thought on my mind and continuing on from last Tuesday of something's missing. Or I didn't say something that I should have said. I missed out on something. And as I was thinking about it, and especially a conversation that motivated me, I began to understand what it is that was actually missing. So I had a conversation after last Tuesday, and going on throughout the week, an individual um, had this. We were talking, and it was one of those where they said, "I don't know where all the Christians are at. I don't know where all the Christians are at." And of course, knowing me, my response was, "You don't know where they're at because they're sleeping." And before they said anything, they just sat back, put their head down, and shook their head, and then, lifted up their head and said, "I can't understand why it's like that. I even experience it where I like to go. I like to look at words, and I like to see how words work, and I like to see how the language, fits into the context of the sentence, and I like to see all of that working, and I can't understand why there are not many more, many other individuals like that. I can't understand why." And my response was, "Well, you just have to be able to, rationalize or realize or understand that there are individuals like you that care for making sense out of thought, and for making thoughts out of thoughts, for further sense making out of those thoughts. And then there are individuals that simply want to just do, because the sequence of doing is more easier than the ramifications of thinking." And that made an impression because the sequence of doing is easier than handling the ramifications of thinking. Why? Because with thought comes change. With thought comes change. The ramifications of examining one's disposition are changes. And the word change in the Bible, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The word change in the Bible means redemption. In Bible language, change means redemption. And it is through analyzing our thoughts and through bringing those thoughts to the opinion of our conversation and to the body of our belief that what then takes place is change or redemption or justification. Justification being a term of purification. The Bible has this term justification in place because the conversation is supposed to be purified. Now, if the conversation is supposed to be purified, that means the conversation is not right in its natural context. The natural context of every single devotional conversation, because it is conceived within the devotional world, the natural context is subjection, one, to idols, and idols particularly framed around a triad or a trio of a father creator, of an essence, female essence, and then of a son of the two, and then also of the code of Moses. This is the general framework of every single conversation. This is what every single conversation is born into. And so when it comes to readjusting or realigning or reestablishing what to adjust or to realign, there's definitely conflict. There's definitely conflict because that realignment can cause a certain challenge of position to take place. And it is a certain challenge of position, and not even from anybody else, but from our own self, that causes a ramification. And the ramification is now I need to change the way I approach my belief. The ramification is that now I need to change the way I observe my opinion, because it's no longer scripted. It's no longer I'm doing to do. Now, at this point in time, I now have documented understanding. It may not be 100, but I have understanding that what I have been doing has not been right. And so the ramification is a change or a redemption in conversation. Now, is that something that the individual wants to go through or not? And that's what I wanted to touch on this week that I have been leaving out for these past weeks and for these past months. Because I've been highlighting the Exodus experience, I've been highlighting what to exit from, I've been highlighting what to exit to, I've been highlighting the feeling of needing to be alone or the state of abandoning the conversation for acquiring a gender of conversation, still throwing that around because that's perfect to use. A, a gender of conversation, allowing the conversation to gender according to the individual human being that is passing through that experience. Gone through all of that. And in addition to saying, while going through all of that, that the experience, this experience in particular, is not for everybody, not for everybody. What I've been failing to do is to highlight the fact that although the experience isn't for everybody, the experience is yet for many. And for the many that do experience this, and for the many that do have this train of thought to where there's an unhealth to their former denominated theory, it's now unhealthy to the individual passing through such an experience. Applause and commendation to you that I have not been giving for this entire time. Because although many are not for this experience, although many are not for this experience, a many few more are allowed to pass through it. Why? For, and the best I could say, the sincerity of their desire to care, to redeem or change the process of thought and approach when it comes to the lifestyle of their devotional conversation and its approach to the living God. Remember, at the very last verse in Psalm 50, to whom will order their conversation aright will I show the salvation of God. There is a continual theme throughout the Bible of the ordering of the conversation and then the revelation of what salvation is, because salvation is the ordering of the conversation. Simple and plain. I've gone through all of the different ways to view this. I won't review them, but simple and plain, salvation to the Bible's mind is the escape of the conversation from its former religious heritage to a heritage above and beyond the religious world, where there is a liberation of mind, of devotion, to allow the character within the scriptures to shape and to form the type of experience and the type of nature and the type of character the conversation should have. Remember, all throughout the Bible, I am a potter, let my hands work. This image of the potter in the hands, whether you're in the book of Isaiah or in the book of Jeremiah, whether you're in the Proverbs, no matter where you go, this image of the living God being a potter and having hands to shape and to form as he would. This is a continual theme because this is a theme that is fixed in overall to the devotional conversation's character. The devotional conversation's character is to be placed into the hands of the living God. Now, there is no God for us to place our conversation into. There is no physical body that we can give that we can give the living God, that we can give the living God. There is no physical devotional body. No, our physical body is not our physical body of devotion. There is no body that we can give to the living God. There is no living God that we can give a body to, despite whatever ritual exists and despite whatever ritual you would submit your conversation to. That's not your body. That's not that body to give, and that's not the living God that will accept. So there has to be another way of giving. There has to be another way of manifesting confidence toward the living God. And the only way, is it plainly says in the book of Isaiah, open and read. Open and read, it says in the book of Isaiah, the word of the Lord. Open and read. Sorry, it doesn't say word, it says book. Open and read the book of the Lord. Only by words and by growing familiar with the context of the words that is within the scriptures can our conversation grow into the height of the fitness that it needs for a continual lesson, for a continual discipline in the classroom that the living God would have the conversation in. And what I have been highlighting has not been your conversation that has been willingly sacrificing itself. What I have been highlighting is that many are not, is that the journey is that the journey isn't, is that the Exodus is about, is that the wilderness experience is for. What I have not been saying, what I have been not been highlighting is that there is a necessary applause given to the individual conversation, willing to settle itself to understand the type of character the mind within the Bible would have it to have. And why? Because attached to such an individual mind or attached to the individual experience, there's a level of experience for consciousness or heightened awareness of consciousness, growing fond of self and doing more than growing fond of self, the self of the conversation. So allowing the self of the conversation to do what it must and to have the ability to risk its own character, to risk its own character. That liberty doesn't just happen for no reason. There is something within the human being. There is something at the heart of the conversation. There is a concern. And the concern for every single conversation welcomed into this experience of an exodus from the landscape of traditional religious theory into the classroom or into the discipline of the mind within the scriptures, self sacrificing love. Every individual, every conversation turned to the scriptures in a real way has done so because of a motivating self sacrificing service of love. A motivating self sacrificing service of love. All of the philosophy, all of the coding, decoding, all of the comprehension, all of the reviewing, all of the metacognition. Sure, all of that is in there. But the underlying reason for why an individual would maintain all of these things, the special individual having at their heart and at their core the sincere desire to demonstrate and to manifest a self sacrificing service of love, individual and particular, only to their human being. That's what I haven't been highlighting. Going through the logistics of it all and, you know, practical applications, what hasn't been said is the type of character that is in this classroom. The type of character that is quote unquote chosen. The type of character that is and will be willing to extend themselves to where they can set themselves aside to let their conversation understand its own self. And that is to the individual who, at their heart, after going through all that they have gone through, finding something special within the Bible that they find special, a self sacrificing service of love is what motivates. That's at the top of Peter's ladder. Peter's ladder says charity, but in real language and context, that word charity translates to mean self sacrificing love. Self sacrificing love. And not just self sacrificing love in the sense of an emotion or the human sense of self sacrifice and the human sense of love. Love to the Bible doesn't mean love to us. The Bible has its own understanding for love. When one is loved, when one is loving, one is edified, one is edifying. So self sacrificing love is really self sacrificing edification, to where you are extending yourself for another mind to edify them to whatever length is necessary for them to be edified. And that takes a lot. And not everybody has that in them. And that's why not everybody is welcomed into this classroom of the Exodus. Because not everybody has at their heart, at the core of their heart, a desire to manifest and to demonstrate self sacrificing love, individual, to their person from a place of an edified stance. Everyone else, everything else, falls into the trap of religious theory or foundational religious experience. Meanwhile, there is the individual mind, there is the individual conversation that will not hold themselves to that trap. In not holding themselves to that trap, they will not confine themselves to that experience. And so then it becomes just like the individual that I spoke to by the end of last week. There are two individuals. There are you, there's you, and then there's the individual that doesn't want to think about what they actually believe in because thought and to think about what one believes in has ramifications. And those ramifications mean a change, or as it says in the Bible, redemption. And the Bible is all about redemption. And the Bible has a context for the redemption that it's all about. And the redemption that the Bible is all about is the redemption of the conversations, thoughts, and feelings. And so many will not acquire the level of fitness needed for this Exodus experience, for this wilderness experience, because there is no heart. There is no heart to suffer the ramifications of understanding that their opinion has been wrong, that their opinion has been false, that there is more beyond what they have been theorizing, that there is more beyond the pain and the disappointment that their religious experience has brought them, yet they continue because they don't want to experience anything else. That's what I've been leaving out. The applause that is necessary for the conversation, passing through this experience, despite the hurt that they feel, despite the confusion, despite the hate. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate there. And despite wanting to stay true to self, willingly putting self aside, so that the self of the conversation can now shine because the religious experience has been guided by the human impulse. With the human impulse put aside, self put aside, now the self of the conversation can rise, and the rising of selves of the conversation and the self of the conversation, well, that rising only leads to an attributed consequence or ramification leading to the intended redemption of mind. Again, Bible salvation is redemption of mind. Because the only thing that we can give to the living God, only thing that we can give, despite, again, whatever ritual and ceremony we would tie ourselves to, the only thing that we can give is our mind. The body of our belief is the only thing that we can consecrate to the living God. And once the body of our belief passes through that course of learning called justification for its baptism, it will then understand why it went through what it went through, and that's something that I always try to anyone that I come across, anyone that would you know learn from me, that the conversation has to be able to have a level of confidence to go through what it needs to go through in order to redeem itself. Sure, there is the mystery of grace and the mystery of the substance of grace. Grace is a substance, according to the scriptures. Grace is a substance entered into not the human body, but into the body of the conversation for the purpose of releasing the chemical or the release of regeneration. Grace is needed. When grace is entered into the conversation, the chemical of regeneration is released. That's part of the science of justification and the redemption attached to it. Now, our conversation needs to experience that, but it can't experience that if it is continually heeding to and deceiving itself or deluding itself by maintaining its stance. The conversation has to breathe on its own. A human being has to step aside from the experience. And so the conversation that's willing to do this, props, applause, commendation. Because not every conversation and not every individual, a great majority, will be willing to do this. Because at the heart of them, there is no desire for a self sacrificing service of love for other or for another mind. So, this classroom, and if you're listening to me, we're in the same classroom. This classroom that your conversation is entered into, it is a classroom given due to the level of humility that is seen from the invisible intelligence governing life. And it is the living God that set that governing invisible intelligence into place that has moved life in a way to bring you to something within the scriptures to find relevance within it. And that has possibly allowed you to be deceived in your experience so that there could come a point in time that you could embrace that deception, know you are deceived and have been, and search for right. Exit from Egypt. Enter into the wilderness experience. Be alone and develop and cultivate the land of your sanctuary to match the sanctuary that is above. That's the individual experience. And that's part of the individual experience that I did not talk about, is that although many are not for it, many few are. And many few are for it for the purpose of being able to get to that hardcore core of love that needs to be unsealed, that only you, your individual human being, can give and to demonstrate. And so I just want to leave it there, leave that message there, that no matter what this week brings and unfolds, no matter what this week brings and unfolds concerning creation, concerning the growth and development of our conversations, thoughts, and feelings, self-sacrificing service of love, keeping that in mind, that no matter what we go through and have been, everything is leading us up to demonstrate and to give a self-sacrificing service of love. And from that self-sacrificing service of love, the edification of other minds, that they may know and possibly experience for themselves um, the classroom and the fitness for it in order for a more healthy human condition and also devotional culture.